I am not often nervous to turn on my mic, but I am quite nervous now, and words matter immensely, and we've learned that particularly over the last 3 days. And um, it was brought up at the conversion therapy conversation that words are like weapons, and so I'm going to try and be very thoughtful. I wrote 25 pages of handwritten notes, and I spent a couple hours today trying to form them into a little bit of something that I could reflect on. And I'm going to mention a lot of names, and I'm going to preempt that. Councillor Carra had the opportunity to have those people on the phone correct him, and so I'm going to apologize in advance if I mangle them worse than Councillor Carra, who plays a lot of Scrabble and is much better than I am at his wordsmithing. And so if I could be allowed a tiny bit more time, I want to really get through some of these things, if that's okay. We heard from many different people these past 4 days. So many people with so many different experiences and emotions. We heard from people that are totally broken. And they are broken because we broke them. Our system of racism broke Farik Fraser and Woolley Idowu. There were so many speakers. I just kind of wanted to pull out a couple of threads from a number of them that I really reflected on. Adam Messiah, your story of degradation and public assault deserves justice, and it has been denied, and I'm really sorry for that. People that I know and work with, Rachel Knight at the Calgary Parking Authority, Rachel Ugwebula, whose real last name I never knew, Fatima Saeed, the young middle school black woman who said, "I'm afraid of the police when I see them in my school. Why are they in my school when there is no nurse in my school? No resources are provided to me that I need as a young woman minority. Why is there a police in my school when there's no nurse?" Shauna Porter, for your righteous rage, as Dr. Smith yesterday so eloquently calls it. Doris Amanpour for articulating budget discrepancies and how they reflect what we value and what we don't. Aiki Kenzo told us the story of the hummingbird in the forest fire and how I did what I could. Terrence Evans has a small informal group calling themselves Black Elders, and they are those little hummingbirds in our city. Ebony Gooden, the deaf woman, whose incredible voice on the inadequacies of access shook me at my core. Richard Blackman, the Indigenous man from Cold Lake whose personal stories of racism made me feel really ashamed. Lionel Magrino, the Filipino man with cerebral palsy, who in his statement said, "I don't want to be seen as an inspiration. Rather, I am inspired by those who came before me." That was an incredible statement. Jordan Anderson, he drove here from Regina to tell his incredibly traumatic story about how he was afraid. He was waking up in the middle of the night angry, and that anger was starting to turn into his all-day life for something that he had nothing to do with, that has ruined him right now. Andy Wolfleg, your local restaurant is your local. That term is supposed to define comfort and safety. Almost all the TV shows, my white TV shows that I grew up with, anyway, but for you, your local wasn't that, and you kept on going back because it was your local, but you didn't know how they were going to treat you depending on who was your server that day when you walked into your local, and that sucks. I have never had that, and I'm sorry for that. And Mr. Ram, who reminded me when we came in, Mr. Ram was on SAIT, on the Students Association at SAIT, who fought for secondary suite legalization. Your story bookends atoms of public degradation. This is a student leader who was publicly degraded in his neighborhood and who advocated for secondary suites to allow people to have affordable housing in our city. I've been shaken to my core again significantly, again since the conversion therapy hearings in May, and I need to be shaken. All of those in my position need to continue to be shook. So many speakers have been shaken their whole lives in big and small ways, and I want to acknowledge that my short journey is a speck to the individual and collective experience of Black and Indigenous and persons of color over hundreds of years. I am amazed and I have hope, and I'm really sad and I'm ashamed. The level of intelligence and courage and passion and sophistication from the speakers made me know that a better world is possible. And I want to lend my privileged power to that. You are all better equipped to wield that power, and I really want to offer it to you in an authentic way. Dr. Smith said, I believe it was this morning or yesterday evening or this morning, they showed up. They showed up. I pulled a number of themes that I think I just wanted to, hopefully, that we can take away. That people are deeply afraid of the very people that are supposed to protect them. And people are tired of being tired. The pieces on the name changing I found so troubling, the inability of you to be who you are just based on your name. And this process is inadequate, and we were told that over and over again. And it's funny that and Councillor Crow, you and I say it all the time, just trust the process. Trust the process. And I know that you actually shouldn't trust this process. There is very clearly systemic racism in our Calgary Police Service. We heard so many stories. Dr. Smith again said, you can't have so many stories that were about the same thing from people who had never met before. There is deep and structural reform that has to happen at the Calgary Police Commission because we're supposed to be holding them to account. And what we've been told by hundreds of people is that that's not happening. And whether that's getting rid of school resource officers, I advocated 2 years ago when Western Canada High School was going to lose their school resource officer, I advocated to have them back, and I never, ever, ever knew that people thought this. That the police are doing the work of nurses and social workers. The DOPE team needs to get funded in the base budget. I'm sick every year of cobbling together one-time money for a service that the police are begging us for. We need to shift that around. There is very clearly systemic racism in the corporation of the City of Calgary. The representation at most of the tables in the city is a joke. And I'm responsible for that. We're all responsible for that. The top 50 managers at the City of Calgary, and not one, is a visible minority? The narrative of benevolence also hit me. I forget that. We think we're better. I read stories on Donald Trump and what's happening in America, and I think we're better. And we talked about we need to have a better understanding of our own local, deep histories of racism, but also deep histories of firsts. I handed along, we had the first Black city councillor in the country. There's a fierce urgency to this work, and it cannot be crumbs of hope dropped from the tables of policymakers, is what one of our speakers said today, and I found that very profound. This has got to be real, and I'm committed to that. And I won't get into the role of the province and the Calgary Board of Education system in this, but we have to figure this out. My only final thoughts are I just really wanted to thank the chair for all of his incredibly hard work. I've said this before, that sometimes we bug Giancarlo for being an inefficient chair. But for the last couple of chairings that you've done, you have been the most effective chair, and nobody else on council could have done the job that you did. And Dr. Smith, I thank you. It's been really, really incredible 3 days. I am listening intently to every word, and I have such a great amount of respect for you, and I appreciate all of your work in helping us through this. Al, we've got to hang out. Thank you for being in it for the long haul. I remember on day one, I said you're in it for the long haul, and you went, and then you committed, and it's been really, really great to get to know you over these last 3 days. Someone said, and I'm sorry I can't remember, but that we live in one of the best examples of pluralism in this world, but that exists in conjunction with a system of structural racism and violence. And that's a crazy thing, and we spend a lot of time celebrating the pluralistic part, which I'm proud of, but we've left behind that other piece. And I just wanted to end off with Regine Uibere-Yeho King, who is at the Faculty of Social Work at the University of Calgary, had a number of really neat things to say, but she had a quote, a Rwandan proverb that I just thought was telling for the close of my piece, that people don't fear darkness, they fear that what they have experienced in that darkness. And that is something that we have to address in a real, tangible way, and we have to hold ourselves to account for that work that's coming ahead. I thanks for the opportunity, Chair, and I obviously hope that everybody can support these recommendations.